And then we'll start talking about each specific trip that AGC offers. Right now we have two that explore Utah. And then please pay attention during the webinar if you want to take notes even, because we'll have prizes with 2 trivia questions at the end. And then you're free to stay for the question and answer session or free to leave. So today I'm joined by my esteemed guest, Haley. Haley, do you want to start and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Haley. I am a guide with AGC. I'm from northeastern Minnesota, along Lake Superior, and I guide the Bryson Zion trip. I've guided it last year, and I'm guiding it this year as well. So, really love Utah and happy to talk about it with all of you.
And my name is Julie Fass. If I haven't gotten to speak with you on the phone, I hope to one day for everybody that's joining. So I currently serve as the Director of Guest Services and Sales with AGC, and I've been a guide / full-time office personnel since 2019. And last year I got to guide hiking Bryson Zion with Haley, and it was so much fun. Oh, and I live in northern Colorado, and I love the desert. So first, let's talk a little bit about Utah in general. Utah is home to 5 national parks, and Utah is home to the world's largest concentration of natural sandstone arches. And this I didn't know before, the nation's tallest waterfall, Stewart Falls. Utah is nicknamed the Beehive State, which if you've driven through it, you've seen the beehive on all of their highway signs. And it was given that moniker by the Mormon settlers, and it comes from a Book of Mormon word meaning honeybee, the provisional state of Deseret. So Deseret is the honeybee. So wanted to talk about the people that have inhabited this land before us and that are still there today. So some archaeological reconstructions suggest human habitation stretching back 12,000 years. And these etchings are from what's known as the Fremont culture. And I think it's important to know that the Fremont people weren't necessarily a cohesive group. That's what people today are just referring to, like a couple thousands of years of groupings and cultures. And because they had similar tools and lifestyles and artwork. And then some other details listed in this slide here. It's also called the Desert Archaic culture. That was actually before the Fremont people. So they were nomadic hunter-gatherers with basketry. They had stone tools. They would use wood and bone. And they were there 10,000 before Common Era and to 400 years after the Common Era. So they moved in units and they had extended families. They hunted small game. And they gathered the roots and seeds in the slightly more cool and moist Great Basin environment. And when we think about climate change, this area was still considered desert, but it had considerably more moisture than we would find on average today. And then those people eventually evolved into the Shoshonean-speaking peoples of the Uto-Aztec family. And then those people became the Northern Shoshone, the Goshute, the Western Shoshone, the Southern Paiute, and the Ute peoples. So today we can see there are 9 tribes listed here, and they're all over Utah. So when we go to these national parks, we are really walking through land that has a lot of sacred history. And so some things that we can do to honor that history: follow leave no trace principles, go to the visitor center where we can read about the history of these people, and just keep in mind of where we're treading. Here's a map of all 5 national parks in Utah. So down here in the southwestern corner, we have Zion, and then we have Bryce. Here's Capitol Reef. Here's Canyonlands, and here's Arches National Park. The parks we visit as AGC currently, we go to Snow Canyon State Park, which we consider a hidden gem, and we're so excited that we've added it to our itinerary in the past couple of years. And then we have Zion, Bryce, and Grand Canyon. I do want to mention that we used to visit Arches on a previous itinerary in Utah, but we found that Arches is probably best suited to independent personal travel because as a commercial group, even though we were operating within permits, it was just so crowded. No matter what time of year we went, the parking was really challenging, and we felt it kind of detracted from the experience. So that's why we currently do not visit Arches. But if you haven't been yet, I highly encourage you to go. Make sure when you go really early in the morning or really late in the afternoon so you're not inundated with other visitors. So I get to talk about Snow Canyon State Park, and then Haley will jump in about Zion and Bryce. Like I said, I consider Snow Canyon a hidden gem, and now you are all in on the secret. And if you're not currently signed up for one of AGC's Utah trips, I hope you do get to register and come explore it with us. So Snow Canyon State Park is a 7,400-acre scenic park quietly tucked amid lava flows. That was what we saw on this picture back here, these petrified lava flows. And it's more desert environment. So I took this from the Snow Canyon State Park website, and I just love how they list it. Majestic views and the subtle interplay of light, shadow, and color dancing across canyon walls. And I hope you feel just as poetic. Here's some interesting trivia about Snow Canyon State Park. Because it's such a beautiful state park, they have filmed quite a few movies here. Do I have any movie buffs in the crowd? Anyone know which films were shot here? So probably the most famous one was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and we get to hike right where they filmed the famous scene where Butch Cassidy falls backwards into a pool of water. And then they also filmed The Electric Horseman and Jeremiah Johnson here. Some other interesting things about Snow Canyon, it's technically located in the larger 62,000-acre Red Cliffs Desert Reserve. And this area was formed, like boundaried, to protect the federally listed desert tortoise and its habitat. And most recent census counts put the desert tortoise at about 10 in this federal reserve. So not that many, and their breeding time is May. And so if we're lucky, we might see a desert tortoise. And if you ever come across one on the road, the park asks you to physically move it off of the road in the same direction it was going. And if you see it on trail, then we stop and let it do its own thing without interrupting it. And on the AGC hikes in Snow Canyon, we've looped together a bunch of different trails for a 4.8-mile loop. And we do the same hike on both trips, the hiking the Grand Staircase and the hiking Bryce and Zion trip, because we think it really gives you the best of the park in a fairly compact trail. And because it's the first day everyone's hiking and it's at altitude, we want to work up to the higher miles and steeper elevation gains and losses. So you can see here, it's just 639 feet elevation gain and loss. And here are all the trails we looped together. So here are some pictures of Snow Canyon State Park. You can see in the middle there, that's a lava tube. We get to climb down inside the lava tube. For those that want to, it's totally optional. There's a really nice placard at the top that tells you about the different kinds of lava. And it's a really fun word to say. It's the or poi poi lava, like the ropey lava or the pokey lava. And Haley just posted a fun fact. They can survive an entire year without drinking water. Woof. And then over on the right here is where the trail gets more sandy and you have these beautiful views. Here are some more pictures from Snow Canyon State Park. So they have a giant desert tortoise kind of monument. It's a short walk where we picnic. You can take this sidewalk and read about the desert tortoises, and then they have large statues that are great for photo ops. And this is the size they can get, which is really incredible. Normally, we associate giant tortoises with places like the Galapagos, but it's humbling to realize that they're in our, quote, backyard as well. And then you can see here there is some loose sand. So I really like gaiters for this trip, like the little dirty girl gaiters that just go over your ankle. And then there's also some flat Forest Service road as well. Any questions about Snow Canyon State Park before we move on to Zion? And if you think of questions while we're going through these, you can just park them in the chat and then we'll get to them at the end as well. And then I did want to include driving times. So for hiking Bryce and Zion, it's a really short trip. It's a long weekend, and that's to give you the best of what Southwestern Utah has to offer without taking too much of your vacation time or travel time. And so from Snow Canyon to Zion is just an hour, 20-minute drive. Okay, Haley, over to you.
All right, so yeah, I will next talk about Zion, which is a national park that AGC does visit on all of our Utah trips. Depending on the year, Zion is the second or third most visited national park. Any idea which park that Zion is usually tied with for second or third most visited? Okay, Grand Canyon. So depending on the year, Zion is the second or third most visited national park, neck and neck with the Grand Canyon, and for good reason. So Zion is really beautiful. It offers something for everyone, from the hiking trails, biking trails, beautiful rock formations, incredible views, and interesting flora and fauna. So this map here just sort of shows, again, southern Utah to help orient you to where Zion is in relation to some of the other sites that we visit. So the southern Paiute name for Zion is Makuntaweep, which means straight canyon. So as Julie mentioned, this area has been occupied by Indigenous people for thousands of years, with different cultures migrating in and out at different points in history. Currently, it's considered the land of the Southern Paiute tribe. So Zion really could keep you busy for weeks with all of the different experiences that it offers. But our AGC trips focus on letting you experience some of the really big highlights of the park. So just a quick, interesting little bit of geology. Zion is located along the edge of the Colorado Plateau, and it's part of what's known as the Grand Staircase. So to explain the Grand Staircase, we see this sort of side view. And so Bryce Canyon, the bottom layer of Bryce, is actually the top layer of Zion. And then the bottom layer of Zion is the top layer of the Grand Canyon. So these three big parks, along with this series of sort of colorful rock layers that you see, form the 100-mile long Grand Staircase. And so from this picture, you can see how it kind of looks like a staircase. So here's a few pictures from around the park. One that I would love to point out is the top middle. You can see the Zion Lodge there. And so for both trips, Bryce and Zion and Grand Staircase, we're super lucky that we get to actually stay in the National Park Lodge. It's a very cool experience because we're on a road that's gated off, so there's no cars driving around. We get to hop on and off the shuttle to make our way around the park. The stars down there at night are incredible. And in the morning, since we're right there at the bottom, right in the heart of the Zion Canyon, the sun coming up and lighting up the canyon walls is just really something to be seen. It's very beautiful. So one of the experiences that we do at Zion is the Scouts Lookout hike. Let's see. So for Scouts Lookout, this is about a 3.5 mile out and back hike. It is a pretty challenging hike, although it's not that long. We do increase over 1,000 feet. It does include the famous Walter's Wiggles, which is a series of 21 switchbacks, which are sort of an iconic Zion image and experience. And then from the top, the reward for your efforts is this epic panoramic view of Zion, which is that picture to the left. And the picture to the right, or sorry, the picture to the right is the view. The picture to the left is sort of what the trail looks like. And so this is Walter's Wiggles. This photo is from the National Park Service. We didn't take it, but it does give you a clear look at why this trip is a 3 and sometimes a 4, because you are heading up those steep switchbacks. It's really fun and it's also really challenging. So yeah, once you get up the top of all those switchbacks, you reach Scouts Lookout, and that's where you get that beautiful view. So from Scouts Lookout, if you're feeling adventurous, you can attempt Angel's Landing. So Angel's Landing, the hike actually starts at Scouts Lookout, and from there it's about another half a mile to Angel's Landing, so 1 mile out and back. It's only a mile out and back, but this is that sort of infamous section of trail where it can be steep, it can be narrow, and certain areas do require those chains for you to hold on to. So here's a little bit of a closer look at that chain section. This is one part that people often have a lot of questions about as far as what's it like, how difficult is it? So you can sort of see it is narrow. If you do have any sort of extreme fear of heights, you would probably want to have a one-on-one conversation with your guide before setting off on that hike. And so if you, it's certainly not necessary. We do offer it on both trips, but of course, you're not required to do it. If you want, you can hike up to Scouts Lookout, and then instead of going to Angel's Landing, you can hike along the rim a little ways to see some different views. Sometimes people like to wait at the bottom so they can cheer on their friends as they come back down from accomplishing Angel's Landing. Or you could head back to the lodge early, maybe dip your feet in the river at the bottom of the hike and just enjoy a little cool off after the strenuous effort. So as of 2022, you do need a permit to hike Angel's Landing. And for good reason, it does get crowded. Even with the permit program, there's still a lot of people, but certainly not nearly as much before the permit program. So it is a good thing. And it's good we're meeting now because actually the deadline to apply for a permit for this fall is July 20th. So in order to hike Angel's Landing between September 1st and November 30th, you want to apply within about a week and a half. So if you know you're on one of these trips, or if you think you might want to do this hike, I would go ahead and get your name in that lottery. And if you don't get into the lottery, there is the option for the day before permit, which is just what it sounds like. You can apply for a permit the day before. Either way, it's not guaranteed. It is a lottery, so it's the luck of the draw. I will say that for the last 2 trips we did, everybody who wanted to go was able to go. So just make sure if you are interested to get your name in that drawing. So the Watchman Trail is just another fun little hike that we do. It's a 3-mile lollipop loop. It starts at the visitor center. And as you can see here, there's just a really gorgeous view of the top. You can see the lower Zion Canyon. This hike is closer to a level 3, so most participants on this trip are able to do it, and it's just a very rewarding, a lot of bang for your buck, really fun little hike. I guess not that little, but a really fun hike. Another iconic Zion experience is the Narrows. And the Narrows is named as such because you get to hike along the narrowest section of Zion Canyon. So you're in a gorge with walls that are 1,000 feet on both sides, and you're actually hiking in the Virgin River. So not along the Virgin River, but actually in it. So this is where you see photos of people hiking in knee-deep, waist-deep, chest-deep water, water that is a little bit chilly, but it is a really fun experience. So yeah, here you can see what that sort of looks like. It starts off maybe around your ankles. Eventually, you'll end up at your hips or waist, and of course, depending on time of year and how tall you are. But the water might even be chest deep at some points. This is not. We don't do this on the Bryson Zion trip because we don't have time. But this is on the Grand Staircase trip. They do provide you with what you need, so you'll be given those stylish gaiters, some good boots, a walking stick. and everything you need to participate in the experience. So the passable section is 16 miles long, but with AGC, what we typically do is hike about 2 hours upstream, and then turn around and head back to the start. Where of course, sooner turnaround is possible if needed. Let's see what else about this. On the Bryce and Zion trip, although we don't get to hike the Narrows, we do take the river walk to where the Narrows start. So you can get your feet in the water and you can see all the people gearing up and heading out for their hikes, which is pretty cool and pretty fun. And from Zion, we head over to my favorite national park, which is Bryce Canyon. As you can see, it's about a 2-hour drive. Bryce Canyon, although it's very small, it's the 9th smallest national park. It's just really magnificent. So once you get there, everywhere you look is something cool to see. So it's just a lot of beautiful scenery packed into a very small, relatively small area. So this again is just sort of that southern Utah to help orient you to where Bryce Canyon is in relation to some of the other sites that we visit. So like Zion, Bryce is also rich in indigenous history with Native people living there for thousands of years. And today it is still a sacred place for the Paiute people. And the Visitor Center at Bryce has a great video about the Native people in their area. It talks about their connection with the land, why it's so important to them, and sort of what they use it for in modern times. So it's a good visitor center. It's a good video. One thing that Bryce is really known for is the hoodoos, or oodoos as it's pronounced in the native language. But these are those sort of otherworldly, beautiful rock formations that were formed over millions of years of layers accumulating and freezing and thawing. So millions of years of that process has made it so that Bryce has the highest concentration of hoodoos in the world. They are found on every continent, but Bryce just has a ton of them. And it's really something to see. So the elevation of Bryce reaches 9,000 feet. So hiking around is a little bit more challenging due to the elevation. And so because of that, we do offer different options when we visit Bryce. So you can see the experiences we offer. And I'll talk a little bit more about each one of those. Yeah, so so the Peak of a Loop, sorry. That is sort of the more challenging option. It's 5 miles with 1,500 feet of elevation gain, reaching over 8,000 feet in elevation. So that one's a little bit more challenging. 5 miles may not sound like a lot, but 5 miles at 9,000 feet is a lot more difficult than 5 miles at sea level, of course. So we also have this sort of middle of the road medium option, which is the Queen's Garden and Navajo Loop. That one's 3 miles with less elevation gain. We only gain about 500 feet. So that's sort of a good middle of the road option if you're not up for a big challenge, but you do still want to get a great hike. And then if both of those are feeling a little bit challenging, we can also just do the rim walk, which you can walk along the rim in either direction. In that case, it would be flat. You could go as far as you want and then maybe have a little extra time for the visitor center. So yeah, we do offer something for everyone and make sure that everyone is comfortable with the choice that they make. On the Grand Staircase trip, there's the additional option of the Fairyland Loop, which is an 8-mile hike with almost 2,000 feet of elevation gain. So that's definitely in the level 4 hike. It's challenging and might take 6 to 8 hours. So that's an option as well. We don't have time for that one on the Bryce and Zion trip. So this is just a little bit more about hoodoos. It talks about how they were formed over 25 million years of the sediment washing up in this low-lying lake. It gradually built up into these sort of limestone towers. And then because of the elevation and the climate at Bryce, all of the freezing and thawing over all of those years created what is now known as the hoodoos. And that's just all those beautiful rock formations that we see all over the park. It's really fun when you're doing the hikes because a lot of the formations have really fun names like Thor's Hammer or the Alligator or Queen Victoria. And it's fun to just look at the formations and figure out why they were named those things. And here's, yeah, just a few on the far left. You can see what those hoodoos look like. In my background, you can actually see them as well. And just some more lovely photos of what it's like hiking around Bryce Canyon. And I'll hand it over to Julie to talk about the itineraries of each of these trips that we offer.
Thanks, Haley. So one more thing I wanted to say about Snow Canyon State Park. Bryce is known for being pretty cold, and so we prepare everyone really well for the Bryce Day or days. And Snow Canyon, even though it sounds like it'd be wintry, it was named after someone's last name. It used to be Dixie State Park, and then they named it after a couple of Utah leaders. So Snow Canyon does not get that much precipitation, only 7.5 annual inches on average, which is nothing if you live in a deciduous place like Haley does in northern Minnesota. So the hiking Bryce and Zion itinerary, we start by flying into St. George, usually on a Thursday afternoon. And then the dinner the first night is at this beautiful cliffside restaurant with incredible food. So make sure to book your flights early so you get in time for dinner. On our trip, we had a couple people that missed the first course of 4 at dinner. And then day 2, we hike in Snow Canyon State Park, which is just right next to St. George. So it's a really easy morning. We pack up from the hotel, go to Snow Canyon, and spend the whole day there. And we have a delicious picnic lunch. Then after the hike in Snow Canyon, we drive to Zion. We check into our lodge. Like Haley had mentioned, we really get a VIP experience in Zion. And we book these reservations 2 years in advance with the national park. If you compare AGC trips to other outfitters, you'll notice probably that the other outfitters are usually staying in Springdale at hotels there. But we really believe that staying in the park makes all the difference. And so you can walk to the hikes, you can take the shuttle easily, you can relax under that gigantic cottonwood in front of the Zion Lodge that featured a couple photos back. And it's just a really peaceful place to be in the canyon. As we had mentioned, Angel's Landing is optional, and you also have the choice. If you get the permit, we go to Angel's Landing, and you get 10 feet into it, and you think, this is great, this is all I needed, I can turn back. That is totally fine. This is your vacation, and we want you to feel as challenged and successful as you desire in the moment, so there's no pressure to go any amount of distance. And same thing for Walter's Wiggles. We had hikers on our last trip that got halfway up Walter's Wiggles and didn't feel great about the exposure or the altitude, and so they got to relax at the beer garden at the Zion Lodge, and everyone had a great vacation. Now we're talking about day 4. Again, we sleep at the Zion Lodge, and then in the morning, we do make it kind of an early morning to beat the traffic over to Bryce, spend the whole day in Bryce, and then drive back. And then on day 5, we hike the Emerald Pools, or if you wanted to see where the Narrows starts, you can, last year we split up into 2 groups. Haley took some people and hiked the Emerald Pools, and I took the other half of the group, and we went to the Temple of Sinawawa and just watched the people getting ready for the Narrows and took lots of pictures of very, very chilly looking people, but they were well prepared. And then you can book your flights home after 5 p.m. on that last day of hiking Bryce and Zion. So again, it's a short itinerary, and we pack everything in. So it's not, of all our itineraries, I would say you don't have a ton of downtime unless you chose to shorten a hike or skip a hike. So if you're looking for more of a sit and relax vacation, I would highly recommend Lake Tahoe Wonder and Wellness on the Water, which Haley just led and has a lot of great downtime built in. Next, we have the hiking the Grand Staircase itinerary. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that it goes to the Grand Canyon. We didn't go into details about the Grand Canyon since this is an Exploring Utah webinar, but please feel free to give us a ring if you want to chat about the Grand Canyon after this. So on day 1, again, you fly into St. George. And St. George, if you haven't been there, has been listed as one of the top 10 places to retire in the United States. And we agree, we think it's wonderful. There is a high concentration of delicious restaurants. The airport is really easy to navigate. It's super small, so your luggage won't get lost. It's also surrounded just by picturesque desert. So on day 2 of the itinerary, you're in Snow Canyon, again mimicking the itinerary for Bryce and Zion. And then that night you drive to Zion. The next day is the Hallmark Day where you hike the Narrows. And just reiterating here, if the Narrows, if you get into it and you think, ooh, I'd actually like to turn back early, you are welcome to do so. And the gear that we rent is included in your AGC trip price. Then day 4, we go up to Scout Lookout with the optional Angels Landing, and then we drive to Bryce. So on the Grand Staircase itinerary, you get to stay over in Bryce, again at a National Park Lodge in the park. And it's really special to be part of the Dark Sky Sanctuary. If it's a cloudless night, you'll be rewarded tenfold with the marvelous tapestry of stars above. So bring your cameras, bring your binoculars. It is worth staying up a little late. Day 5, you hike in Bryce. That's the Fairyland Loop, or a shorter than 8-mile loop if you choose. And then on day 6, you drive to the Grand Canyon and hike there. And we stay close to the park. Day 7, another hike in the Grand Canyon. Day 8, a third hike, and then drive back to St. George, and you fly out after 5 p.m. Activity levels. So Bryce and Zion is a level 3/4, and then hiking Grand Staircase is a level 4. For AGC, a level 5 is considered the most challenging. A level 3 is somewhere in the middle, and a level 4 will definitely get your heart rate going. So you can expect elevation up to 10,000 feet for level 3. And a level 4, in this regard, we don't go above 10,000 feet, but in general, you can expect up to 14,000 on a level 4 for AGC. And then just some more details. Each day's hike will be between 4 and 6 hours for Bryce and Zion. You know, a lot of that is dependent at how fast we hike or how long we stay at the top of Scout Lookout. So if you're a stickler for numbers, maybe let those expectations go, because it is really nice to stay at the top of Scout Lookout and have our picnic lunch there. And if you think that you're interested in a level 3/4, but maybe you don't feel currently ready for that fitness level, we partner with Becky Rupp. She is wonderful and has gotten a ton of our hikers prepared for their trips. She does have a free 30-minute consultation. So if you're not sure, it's definitely worth picking up the phone and asking her what she thinks and if you could benefit from Adventure Ready coaching. Becky, fun fact, is currently hiking Kilimanjaro with a group that she partnered with to train them and hike with them. So she is super active. She walks the talk. She lives here in Colorado, and she's really friendly. Well, thanks so much for attending, everyone. Haley and I are going to stick around for question and answer, but we'll stop the recording, and then you're free to leave if you're ready to get on with your day. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thanks, everyone.